Hey guys, welcome to class 102 of RV Family Adventures. I really hope everyone had a chance to watch the class 101 where we covered the basics and kind of decision-making process on how you actually get to choose which one of these RVs is best for you and your family. In class 102, we're really going to get specific. We're going to kind of get into the details and go deep on all the specifics from power systems to towing. My promise, what I want everyone to get out of this class is I want everyone that's watching this to be able to take their family on a multi-day RV adventure. We've talked about the concept of magic, but now we're going to show you the mechanics and the tricks. At this point, you've made the decision to go on an RV adventure with your family. Congrats, I am stoked for you guys. You guys are going to be really happy. You've chosen your RV and you've made the selection and you've decided that a travel trailer is the way you want to go. What I'm going over is going to be applicable for a lot of things, but in this class, we're going to be talking specifically about the travel trailer. So I've traveled about 26,000 miles in our RV and I've learned a few things about preparation and getting wheels up, so to speak. We're going to review the 4 systems you have in your RV. I touched on these briefly in the RV tour in the 101 class. These systems are towing, power, water, and climate. Your towing checklist is your 7-pin connection, your brake lights, your tail lights, your blinkers, your sway bars, your propane, your leveling, and your hitch connection. One of the things I always do when I set up my RV and I'm getting ready to go is I really check that 7-pin connection. The 7-pin connection connects from my RV to the back of my truck. One of the things that you always want to make sure is that connection is it's secure, because as you jostle around and drive, it can pop out. So when I get my 7-pin connection in, there's a couple things that I always check for: my brake lights, my tail lights, and my blinker. So to check for brake lights, make sure your lights are on, press your brake in, and make sure the back lights light up on the camper. The other thing I always check for is my blinkers on each side. So I click my left blinker on and my right blinker on. I have someone stand behind the camper and make sure that both blinkers are working on the RV. Now I want to talk about sway bars and why sway bars are so important. Some people tow without them, some people tow with them. I definitely will never tow unless I have sway bars. What do sway bars do? Sway bars are a connection from your hitch to your RV. What they do is they keep your trailer in line. If you're driving and you go over a bump or the road is kind of swervy or you get passed by a large vehicle, sometimes your trailer can start to sway. Those sway bars are there to minimize the sway of any type of road type or passing by a certain vehicle when the camper could actually have some wind where it starts to sway. They're very easy to set up. I would recommend towing with them. That's what I have on our setup. Propane is an important thing. You're never supposed to travel with your propane on. There's multiple reasons for this. One is if you get into an accident and your propane tank gets pierced, you could have a pretty serious explosion on your hand. So I will show you in this how to shut off and make sure all your propane is off before you start to leave. Leveling. This is also very important. Your hitch needs to be level with your connection from the camper. So what I mean by that is the back hitch that comes off of your vehicle needs to be level to the hitch that comes off of your RV. You always want to make sure that you have a level ride. And what I mean by that is that the front of your RV isn't tilting too far down towards your vehicle, or it's not tilting too far back from your vehicle. Each one of those is going to result in a bad tow, which means you're going to get sway somewhere. So always make sure that your RV is completely level when you take off for towing. So your power checklist, there's quite a bit to cover here because there's a lot of different scenarios that you're going to get into, and I'll go through our system and kind of how I've set our system up. Really, the checklist is really all about your power sources for different things. So that can be powering your camper to powering smaller devices and the different things you're going to use to get that done. So what do I always carry? I always carry a generator, and I always carry power packs for small devices. Just sometimes I want to power my computer or my phone and I don't want to waste the power that I have in my camper. So I always have like smaller power packs that I use for phones and computers and stuff like that. I also carry a slew of solar panels. My travel trailer is also equipped with solar panels on the top. Some people are going to have this, some people are not. This is the way that I've set mine up. Let me walk you through some different scenarios about how you're going to use your power. When you take off in your RV, there's kind of 2 different ways you can go. And in my mind, and the setup that I have is used more for boondocking. And boondocking means camping without power or water sources. I always carry a generator for that, and I have the power that comes out of the camper, the power cord that comes out of the camper. I have adapters. And the reason I always carry adapters with my power cord is because I never know what kind of power I'm going to be pulling. For example, if you're at an RV park, you're either going to be pulling 50 amps or 30 amps. Now my generator, I always have an extension cord with a 20 amp adapter that runs off of my power that comes from my camper, because I have to pull from my generator with a 20 amp. Now if I'm plugging into someone's house that I'm staying at, that is also 20. So it's very important to understand what kind of adapters you're going to need from where you're going. Where you're going is always going to kind of dictate what kind of power source or adapters that you're going to need. Like I said, we're set up for boondocking, which is more off-grid, so I always carry a generator with me. But I always make sure I have my adapters because it's very important. Now the power packs for small devices like cell phones and cameras and batteries and any type of smaller device are important too, because sometimes when you're boondocking, you really want to save your power. So what I do is before I leave on any trip, I charge all my small power packs to charge my smaller devices. It's just a great thing to have, especially when you're in your car or in your vehicle and you're traveling. You can power phones. You know, when I get to where I'm going, I can always power small devices. Solar panels are also a really great way to power small devices. And when you're boondocking, solar panels can also come in really handy for powering the actual camper. And that's kind of the setup that we have. So your water checklist, when you're going to walk in, you're going to see multiple tanks inside of your RV. Those tanks are going to be fresh water, black water, and gray water. Now let's walk through what each one of those tanks is for. Your fresh water is what you fill and you drink. Your gray water is anything, it's a tank that fills anything that will come out of the drain in the shower. So your sink and your shower, those drain into the gray water tank. Your black water tank is your sewage tank. Now, those are the three tanks that are very important because you're always going to want to know and check the levels of each one of those tanks to know when you need to dump and when you need to fill. Our travel trailer is kind of unique. We're set up for boondocking. So in my travel trailer, I only have two tanks. I have a freshwater tank and a gray water tank. I do not have a black water tank because I have what's called a composting toilet. Now, a composting toilet is really great if you want to travel off-grid and boondock. And the reason why a composting toilet is so important because you do not have to physically dump your sewage through a hose into some type of dump site. The reason I like it so much is because it keeps us moving faster. I don't ever have to wait in dump lines. I can just grind up my sewage and put it outside in nature, or I can put it into a bag and throw it away. For us, that works great. For you guys, everyone, you guys will figure this out. If you're going to be going to RV sites, you're going to have a black tank. If you're going to be boondocking, you're probably not going to have a black tank. The other really important thing to think about is what kind of camping you're doing. If you're going to be going to RV sites, you probably are going to have plenty of water, so you're not going to need extra water containers. You might want to fill your tank, but when you get there, you're going to have a pretty secure water source. For us, in our setup, like I said, we like to boondock, we like to be off-grid. So I fill my tank, and water is very precious for us because I never know when I'm going to get to refill it. So I'll always bring at least 2 to 3, 6 to 8 gallon water tanks with me, full when I leave the house. And the reason I do that is because I never know how far we're going to go out, and I always want to have that extra water with me. All right, climate. So in climate, we're going to cover fans, AC, and heat. So typically what you're going to find is like a lot of this depends on where you go, right? So if you're going to someplace cold, obviously you want to make sure you have good propane fill because you're going to be running propane to heat. Fans versus AC, you know, our setup, I do have AC on our RV, but I don't like to use it that much. What we typically do is we close everything down during the day, and we actually pull the blackout shades inside the RV down, because what it does is it actually keeps the heat out of the camper or out of the RV during the day. And then at night when it starts to cool down, directionally, like if the sun is setting over here, I will keep these shades drawn and I'll open up the shades and then let fresh air in on this side. And I typically use fans to kind of push everything around the RV. I like that better than AC. I do use AC every once in a while. Like I said, the way that we typically go out is boondocking, so it's very difficult and it takes a lot of power to use AC when you're out in the middle of nowhere. So we typically like to have a lighter footprint on our power and use a lot of fans versus AC. If you're at an RV park, on the other hand, and you have unlimited power, AC is very easy and it can be great when it's really warm. Propane, you know, typically we like to keep our climate around 69 degrees, right? So if it gets cold at night, that propane heater is automatically going to kick on and keep you at a nice comfortable level. Up next, passing time on the road family style.